What if the 10 plagues weren't random disasters? What if every single one was a direct, deliberate, and very public humiliation of a specific Egyptian god? Because that's exactly what happened. The Egyptians believed their gods controlled every force of nature, the Nile, the sun, the harvest, life, and death itself. Pharaoh was considered a living god. Egypt was the most powerful empire on earth. And God didn't just free his people. He systematically destroyed every single thing Egypt worshipped, one plague at a time, in front of everyone. This is the story of 10 battles between the God of Israel and the gods of Egypt, and Egypt lost every single one.
To understand why the plagues hit so hard, you have to understand what Egypt believed. The Egyptians had over 2,000 gods, but their religion wasn't just about worship, it was about order. They had a concept called Ma'at, the divine balance and harmony of the universe. The pharaoh's entire job was to maintain Ma'at. The gods were the forces that held civilization together. The Nile gave life. The sun rose every morning. The crops grew. Babies were born healthy. All of this, the Egyptians believed, happened because their gods were in control. So when God sent Moses to Pharaoh with the message, "Let my people go," he wasn't just making a political demand. He was about to prove, in the most undeniable way possible, that every god Egypt trusted was powerless. Exodus 12:12 says it plainly. I will bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. I am the Lord. Not some of them, all of them. Let's go through them one by one.
Plague 1, water to blood. Target, Hapi, god of the Nile, and Osiris. The Nile was everything to Egypt. It was their food source, their transportation, their very survival, and it was sacred. Hapi was the god of the Nile's annual flood, depicted as a blue or green man with a large belly, representing abundance. He was beloved. His floods brought the rich silt that made crops grow. Without Hapi, Egypt starved. But there was a deeper connection. The Egyptians also believed the Nile was the bloodstream of Osiris, the god of the afterlife, death, and resurrection. The Nile was literally divine blood flowing through the land. So when Moses struck the Nile and turned it to blood, every fish died, the water became undrinkable, and the smell was unbearable. This wasn't just a water problem. It was a direct statement. Your life-giving God is dead. The source of your abundance is now a source of death. Hapi could not protect the Nile. Osiris could not preserve it. Round 1, God of Israel, 1. Gods of Egypt, 0.
Plague 2, frogs. Target, Heqet, goddess of fertility and childbirth. Here's where the plagues get deeply ironic. Heqet was the Egyptian goddess of fertility, childbirth, and the creation of life. She was depicted as a woman with the head of a frog, or sometimes as a frog herself. Frogs were sacred in Egypt. They were symbols of new life, abundance, and blessing. Egyptians wore frog amulets for good luck and protection. So God sent frogs, millions of them. Frogs in the beds, frogs in the ovens, frogs in the kneading bowls, frogs crawling over the Pharaoh himself. The thing Egyptians couldn't kill because it was sacred became a suffocating, unbearable curse. And then they all died, piled into heaps, rotting in the sun. Their symbol of life and fertility had become a symbol of misery and decay. Heqet was supposed to bring new life. Instead, she brought a stench that covered the entire nation.
Plague 3, lice or gnats. Target, Geb, god of the earth. The third plague came from the dust of the ground itself. Aaron struck the earth, and lice, or gnats, depending on the translation, erupted from the soil across all of Egypt. Geb was the god of the earth. He was depicted lying beneath the sky goddess Nut, his body literally being the ground of Egypt. Geb controlled the same soil that grew the crops, the same soil that Egyptians believed their dead were entrusted to. When the earth itself turned against Egypt, producing not crops, not abundance, but swarming, biting insects, Geb was being publicly humiliated. And notably, this is the first plague the Egyptian magicians could not replicate. They tried and failed. Their own admission to Pharaoh, "This is the finger of God." The earth didn't obey Egypt's gods, it obeyed the God of Israel.
Plague 4. Flies. Target, Khepri, god of rebirth. Swarms of flies, or possibly a mix of insects, including beetles, descended on Egypt, but with one critical detail. Goshen, where the Israelites lived, was completely untouched. This was the first plague with a clear dividing line. The separation wasn't geographic coincidence, it was God announcing, "I know exactly who belongs to me." Khepri was the scarab beetle god, the god of the rising sun, transformation, and rebirth. The sacred scarab was everywhere in Egyptian culture, on amulets, in tombs, on jewelry. It symbolized the sun rolling across the sky, bringing new life every morning. The plague turned that sacred image into something that swarmed, destroyed, and ruined. What Egypt venerated, God multiplied into a curse. Plague 5. Death of livestock. Target, Hathor and Apis. Hathor was one of Egypt's most beloved goddesses, depicted as a cow or a woman with cow horns. She represented love, beauty, music, motherhood, and joy. Her sacred animal was the cow. Apis was the sacred bull, a living god worshipped in Memphis. A real bull was selected, housed in a temple, and treated as a divine being. His death was a national mourning event. When God struck the livestock of Egypt, horses, donkeys, camels, cattle, sheep, and goats, and none of the Israelites' animals died, the message was unmistakable. The sacred cow was dead. The holy bull was dead. The gods they represented were powerless to protect even their own earthly forms. Pharaoh checked. He verified that not one Israelite animal had died, and still he would not let the people go.
Plague 6. Boils. Target, Sekhmet, Isis, and Thoth, Egypt's gods of healing. Egypt had a sophisticated medical tradition deeply intertwined with their gods. Sekhmet was the goddess of plague and medicine. She could both send disease and heal it. Isis was revered for her magical healing powers. Thoth was the god of wisdom and medicine. The 6th plague struck humans and animals alike with painful, festering boils, and it came from soot thrown into the air. And where were Egypt's healing gods? Silent. Scripture notes that even the Egyptian magicians couldn't stand before Moses because the boils were on them. The very people who served Egypt's gods, who called on Sekhmet and Isis for protection, were writhing in pain. Their gods of medicine couldn't heal their own priests. Plague 7. Hail. Target, Nut, Shu, and Osiris. Nut was the goddess of the sky. Her body literally arched over the earth as the heavens. Shu was the god of air and atmosphere, holding Nut up. Together, they represented the protective dome of the sky above Egypt. And then, fire and hail rained down from that sky, the worst storm in Egypt's recorded history. It shredded crops, killed livestock left in the fields, stripped trees bare, and struck down anyone who hadn't taken shelter. The sky, Nut's domain, became a weapon. The air, Shu's realm, carried destruction. And Osiris, god of vegetation in the afterlife? The flax and barley he was connected to were completely destroyed. But God gave a warning first. Those Egyptians who feared his word brought their servants and animals inside, and they survived. Even in judgment, God made a distinction between those who listened and those who didn't. Plague 8. Locusts. Target,
Nephri and Osiris, gods of grain and harvest. Whatever crops survived the hail, the wheat and spelt that had not yet sprouted, were devoured by locusts so thick they darkened the sky. Nephri was the god of grain. Osiris was associated with agriculture and the annual flood cycle that made farming possible. The fertility of the land was their domain. The locust plague didn't just destroy food, it declared that Egypt's agricultural gods had completely failed. Their ability to provide, the entire basis of Egyptian civilization, was gone. Egypt's officials pleaded with Pharaoh before this plague came, "Do you not yet realize that Egypt is ruined?" Even they could see it. The gods weren't coming to save them. Plague 9. Darkness. Target, Ra, Amun-Ra, and Horus, the most powerful gods in Egypt. This one was personal. Ra was the supreme sun god, the king of the Egyptian pantheon. Every morning, his solar bark crossed the sky, bringing light and life to the world. Pharaoh himself was considered the son of Ra, the living embodiment of the sun god on earth. Amun-Ra was the combined form, the hidden power of the universe made manifest in the sun. Horus was the god of the sky and kingship, whose eyes were the sun and moon. The sun was not just important to Egypt, it was Egypt's highest god. And for 3 full days it disappeared. Not clouds, not weather, a thick darkness. Exodus describes it as a darkness that could be felt, blanketed Egypt. 3 days of absolute blackness. The Egyptians couldn't see each other, they couldn't move. But the Israelites had light in their homes. The most powerful god in Egypt couldn't produce a single ray of light. Ra was publicly, completely, and humiliatingly defeated, and every Egyptian knew exactly what it meant.
Plague 10. Death of the firstborn. Target, Pharaoh himself and every god of protection. The final plague was the most devastating and the most theologically precise. The firstborn son in Egyptian culture was everything. He was the heir, the continuation of the family, the hope of the future. And Pharaoh's firstborn was the future god-king of Egypt. Osiris was the god who judged the dead and granted passage to the afterlife. Bes and Teweret were household gods specifically tasked with protecting children and families. Men was the god of fertility and continuation of the family line. All of them failed in one night. Every firstborn in Egypt died, from Pharaoh's palace to the dungeon, from the noble houses to the livestock. No household was untouched. But every Israelite household that had applied the blood of a lamb to their doorposts was passed over completely. The lamb's blood, a preview of what was coming centuries later, was more powerful than every protective deity in Egypt's entire religious system. Pharaoh, the living god, woke up to find his son dead. The man who claimed divine power could not protect his own child, and Egypt finally broke.
10 plagues, 10 Egyptian gods, or entire categories of gods, publicly defeated. But here's what's easy to miss. God didn't do this out of cruelty. He did it out of clarity. Egypt had enslaved his people for over 400 years. The gods they trusted, the gods their Israelite slaves had watched them worship, needed to be exposed for what they were, not just for Israel's sake, for Egypt's sake, for the sake of every nation that would hear the story. Exodus 9:16 records God's own words to Pharaoh, "But I have raised you up for this very purpose, that I might show you my power, and that my name might be proclaimed in all the earth." Not some of them, all of them. This wasn't just a rescue mission, it was a declaration. There is one God. He controls the Nile and the sky and the sun and the harvest and life and death itself, not because he took those things from lesser gods, but because he created them in the first place. The plagues didn't just free Israel from Egypt, they freed the watching world from any doubt about who was really in charge. Subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden history and forgotten truths of the Bible.